Hi, my name's Louise Bainbridge, and I am the educational leader at Lady Game Community Kindergarten at West Lindfield. I've been teaching there for 10 years, and I've been an early childhood teacher for, I think, nearly 30 years now. Yeah,
Wow.
with lots of experience. I also have 4 children of my own, so I come from many perspectives today.
Yeah, firsthand as well. Can you tell us a bit about what has led to your centre's strong philosophy and practice around inclusion?
We were very fortunate to receive a phone call out of the blue early last year with a family looking for 2 positions for their twin daughters. And it just so happened that there were 2 spots with people moving out of the area that had come up that very same morning. The mother was concerned on the phone as she identified that she had a daughter with high support needs, and her other daughter did not have these needs. She'd suffered a severe stroke, which led to her having significant health difficulties, and she was wondering if we could support her within our program. I happened to be in the office at the time that she rang with the director, and we immediately agreed that we'd love to meet the family and have them on board and ensure that we could support their needs and have them in our service, which we've done now for the last year and a half almost.
Wow, that long, that's amazing. Fantastic. How smooth has this journey been for your team and all the children?
It's been relatively smooth, I feel, for the family, and I'm hopeful that they would say the same. It began with a lot of funding requirements around what we would need to be able to support her physical needs. She does not have voluntary movement of her body, has significant visual impairments, and is nonverbal. So that required us to apply for funding for 3 different activity chairs, which gave her the most opportunity for inclusiveness within our environment, which enabled us to move her at different heights according to her needs and how we could encourage her engagement with the other children and their engagement with her as well. Also, her care needs around hydraulic change tables, beds. She also has feeding tubes and things like that as well that we went on quite a learning journey with. At the beginning, we were initially quite worried that we would be able to learn as quickly as her mother assured us that we would, as her learning journey had also been, but we did manage to quickly gain a new skill set, which enabled us to care for her physical needs so that then we could get to know her better and accommodate all of her needs, not just her physical needs within our environment.
Amazing. I'd love to hear an example of how you have adapted the learning activities to be more inclusive for all the children.
So some of the chairs which I discussed, one is an activity chair, which gives her the option of sitting at table height with the children. When we have group times, we have another chair, like a tomato chair, which can be placed on the ground. So when I have a group time with the children in my group of 10, she's also able to sit in the circle for our acknowledgement of country. Towards the end of last term, I had lots of children interested in numbers, and her role as a child who is nonverbal and doesn't have voluntary movement of her body, her role was to ring the bell with the help of her support worker. And she loves the sound of music and bells, which was great. So that gave her pleasure. It gave her a sense of power as well, and gave her an important role within our program on that given morning.
Wow, what a simple way to have that inclusion without having to upset, I suppose, all the other routines of your day. Amazing. Um, what changes have you witnessed with all the children overall?
The child has a very strong startle reflex. So the biggest accommodations I would say that both the educators and the children in the setting have had to be aware of is mindfulness of their own impact on the environment, moving chairs in and out, dropping things in the home corner when they're banging cupboards open and closed. We can make her have quite a significant startle movement, which will bring tears. Obviously, we want to ensure that children have a positive experience in our learning environment, and we don't want them to be impacted negatively by other children and educators. So it's really been great to ensure that everybody becomes more aware of their impacts on the noises around them. You'll hear children talking to each other and saying, shh, be careful, you've got to be quiet. She is sleeping also, we have to be significantly lower. So all the children, we let them know when she's going to bed, when her body needs to rest, and they know that they need to be quiet. And the children will often correct each other and the staff.
Yeah, that's amazing. So obviously it was a big learning curve at the start. How did you successfully collaborate and communicate with the families?
We have an online platform which we use with all families, which is Story Park, which is how we communicate with all of our families. I'm conscious that the mother has a lot of meetings with therapists, doctors, and so on. So I try not to overwhelm her with too much information from myself and us. She gets the same information that everybody else does in our service at the end of the week, a week in review, summative assessments, and so on. Obviously, the day-to-day conversations around physical needs of that week may come and go. We have the ILP meetings twice a year due to our funding agreements, and we endeavour to have roundtable discussions with allied health workers and therapists from the different organisations from which she accesses. That has probably been one of the biggest challenges. There's been a lot of high turnover amongst all therapists that she has been seeing. We'll arrange to meet one, they don't come out, then a new one will come. So that has been frustrating for myself, plus the family as well. They did have some long-term therapists who were lovely, but unfortunately, people's circumstances change and they move on, which makes it hard for continuity for the family. So I'm glad that we've been able to provide that continuity for the family.
So besides those roundtables with the therapists, how else do you utilise their knowledge or their techniques within your service?
So, for instance, she has a vision occupational therapist, which I didn't know existed before we had her. So she has a normal OT, and then one of which she hasn't had, for an example, she hasn't had any therapy with this OT for about 6 months because they can't find one. But she has a vision OT, who's the second one we've had. So I share information with her around her interests when she was transitioning to get to know this child, along with her previous one. We obviously see what she does and learn through that. Sometimes I might need some guidance with some of the orthoptic reports that I receive. Some of they're quite long and detailed, and I need them, what are the main goals that you gain from this report? What are we working towards with this? With each area, I'll have goals identified that are their main priorities, short-term and long-term as well. So it's nice to see how different people work alongside her. But unfortunately, that hasn't been as often or as much of an impact as what I would have hoped as a professional myself, wanting to learn more about working with children with diverse needs.
Okay. Did you learn a lot from the parents themselves?
Yes, definitely. We've had to make a few phone calls when feeding tubes have fallen out, and and particularly obviously around her interests. It was interesting last year. Her twin sister is now at school, and she stayed with us for another year. But last year, while they were alongside each other in the same group, her twin sister would advocate for her needs, would share her interests from home. And it was a lovely way for the other children to get, and for us as educators to get to know her even better, particularly as she was transitioning, to have her there with us. So that was, yes, her twin sister was a great resource for us.
Beautiful. On that note, what tips can you give other parents hoping to enrol into their local early childhood centre?
I would ask lots of questions, make lots of careful observations. I'd encourage families to look at how the educators are interacting with yourselves and your child, how they would like to get to know you, how they are interacting with the children around them. Perhaps you could ask how they have supported a child with diverse or additional needs in the past, and how they envision that they would do that for you and your family. But I really feel that, yes, the most important thing is just to spend time in the environment, ask for additional visits, ask about their orientation process for any families, whether their child has diverse needs or not. We encourage families to come back for orientation as often as they feel is necessary for themselves sometimes, and or their child. Often it's the families that might need those extra orientation visits to get to know us and our environment. And for sometimes it is for the children as well.
Absolutely. What has surprised you most about the last year and a half?
Probably the biggest surprise has been in observing how the other children in the program have learnt to accommodate her diversity, and how us as an educational setting has been able to celebrate diversity amongst all of the children. Watching children learn how not to interact with their peers non-verbally, and the children are, how their capabilities, they are able to, they move to the left side of her body where her strongest field of vision is, which they remember. We thought about tying a ribbon on the side of her wheelchair, but we decided that wasn't necessary. Most of the children would remember to go to the left side. They'd remember where her very small field of vision was, and that's where they would communicate with her. They learnt her interests. They knew which songs and noises made her smile, which noises and songs made her laugh. So seeing how diversity can be celebrated in such a fun and loving way, I think was the most positive thing that I've seen.
Amazing learning opportunities.
Mm.
So what's next in the inclusion journey now that this child might move to school next year?
Yes, we're still unsure about her movements as yet. I'm sure many of the families recognise how transitions can be a challenging time for many families of children with diverse needs. We have been asking around through word of mouth to see if we can utilise our knowledge and also the specialised equipment that we have. Not only do we have the special chairs, which I mentioned earlier, we also had a lift put in through government grants. which we're very fortunate to have. And we know we are very fortunate to have all of this specialised equipment. So we'd hate to see our journey of inclusion stop here. So we're hopeful that through word of mouth or through some of the allied health therapists that we may be able to support other families now and in the future with what we have learnt just in the last year and a half, so that we can continue our growth as educators as well as our growth as a community.
Amazing. I hope that families can utilise not just the physical attributes of your service now, but the holistic approach that you obviously do have. Okay, so just a few quick fire questions, and this is about you and what your thoughts are. So what does inclusion mean to you, Louise?
Inclusion, I think, is a celebration of children's abilities, diversities, a feeling of belonging for all.
Nice. And what does inclusion look like for families of children with disability?
I think for families, a feeling of belonging to an educational setting or any service is the most important aspect. They want to feel that their child and their family are valued, that they are welcome, that they are seen as capable, their strengths are identified and built upon, and that they feel that they can share not only their child, but also their knowledge as well.
Amazing. In Australia, what do you think is holding us back from having total inclusion in our early childhood and education settings?
It's a very large question. Having had my own children almost finish school, I would say education for teachers would be the biggest barrier. Exposure, perhaps the training that teachers receive doesn't have the same extent. I'm unsure. People are all on their different learning journeys, and hopefully there's definitely been more in the media recently around inclusion, and I'm hopeful that that will promote people's interest and their desire to learn more about how we can celebrate diversity.
Nicely said.